Hi, and welcome to today's edition of Why São Paulo, the podcast where we explore Brazil's magic through its people and its places. I'm Emily Witt, an American legal recruiter with a deep appreciation for Brazil and its culture. Today, I'm joined by Mônica Ramos Machado, a fellow legal recruiter who's moving back to São Paulo after 9 years abroad. When we recorded this, Mônica was in the middle of packing up her life in the United States, and I was living out of a suitcase in a hotel, waiting to move into my apartment. We were both in transition, navigating big changes, reflecting on where we've been, and looking ahead to new beginnings in Brazil. São Paulo is a sophisticated, fast-paced metropolis, and it reminds me a lot of New York City. But doing business here, like anywhere else, comes with its own nuances. Relationships are everything. Trust is at the core of business dealings, and cultural differences shape the way people work, whether it's Brazil, the US, or Europe. Mônica and I are diving into what makes São Paulo one of the best cities in the world, from career opportunities to cultural insights and the nuances of a work-life balance. So whether you're an expat, a business professional, or just curious about Brazil, stay tuned for this next edition of Why São Paulo.
Let's begin with the question I ask everyone, and that is, do you have a special place or area in São Paulo that is near and dear to your heart that you want to share?
So something clear, because honestly, there are so many places that I love in São Paulo. First, it's my hometown. Second, it's too big. So there are so many amazing places. So I'm going to start with a few, but probably I'm going to forget about so many others. So I was born and raised in Vila Madalena, Pinheiros, Alto de Pinheiros, that region. So it's super meaningful to me. And I love like Praça das Corujas, Praça Pôr do Sol. They are so beautiful. They are really nice parks, and I really love them, and I have great memories. And once I'm in São Paulo, I always love to walk around and just be there. And being there and walking around, it's enough. So Vila Madalena has so many amazing places, and I'm in different spots. I would say the street art scenes, there are so many street art streets, like Beco do Batman, that it's super famous nowadays, but I've known for so long, even when it was not that famous. I'm super into arts, all kind of arts. So for me, like MASP Museum, MAM Museum, like in the Parque Ibirapuera, that's so gorgeous as well. I mean, there are so many beautiful places. Mercadão of São Paulo, that's Mercado Municipal. It's super nice because you feel that you are in São Paulo, but also you feel that you are in other places of Brazil. You can find so many different food and people and different cultures of Brazil in São Paulo.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. And the energy is just really, really incredible here. That being said, energy pulling forces, you found yourself all over the world: London, Miami, the Boca Raton area, New York, right? Like, what is pulling you back? I think we have some of the answer that you talked about is home, but, can you explain this feeling of timing and going back to the city?
Sure. Well, after living so many different places, as you said, I realized that being close to my family and my roots, it's priceless. It's the most important thing on earth. And I was very lucky to be able to live abroad in a time that my daughter was, a child. She was born in the United States. She's American. So I could raise her not only abroad. It's super challenging, but for her was good. It was amazing. But also in a time that my parents, my family were able to visit me a lot. What it means, like, things are changing now. My parents are getting older. My daughter she already has her attachments and her roots. But from now on, it's going to be so hard for her to moving around. That's why I'm coming back to Brazil. Her parents are Brazilian. She has like extended family and a big family in Brazil. So I think I always wanted to be back to Brazil, but now it's the right time for me and my daughter, personally and professionally.
Yeah, no, that's great. And speaking of professionally, you and I share the same role. We're both legal recruiters, and wanted to just ask you how you fell into it and, a little bit about your story.
I mean, I think since I was born, I always had this great connection to myself. I think people are different, and there are people that can't live, can do crazy stuff that I do, moving around and living by myself. I'm coming back to my hometown, to my country, to my family, to my culture, that it's my comfort zone. But at the same time, I'm not the same person anymore. I'm a different person now. So talking about legal recruitment, it's the same thing. I've lived abroad. I've learned so much from the Europeans, from the Americans, from, the experts, especially in New York. But moving back to Brazil, work-wise, I'm different as well. It's much more sophisticated. São Paulo, it's a super sophisticated city. It's like a super developed country for Latin America. It's the place to be in Latin America, right? But it's still like they have different backgrounds. I think the legal recruitment market is developing a lot there, but it's still embryonic if we compare to United States and the UK, for example, the place that I had experience.
Yeah. And what are some of the similarities and differences of work culture in the regions that you've worked?
Okay. There are so many differences. Okay. Let's start with the United States, okay? Because you're gonna tell me if you agree or not, okay? Because you're American and you're an expert in the United States. I think people are much more direct, objective, and time is money. And what else? People are always in a rush because they respect each other times, and they are focused on delivery. They are focused on being practical, hands-on, and I think it's a really productive country. Working in the United States taught me a lot, to be more focused, to be more direct, to be more productive, to be on time. So I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, well, I'm nodding my head because I agree with you 100%. But where I do want to go with this, and this is something I appreciate about being here, is we have all of these things: punctuality, results, time is money. Go, 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 go. But it's very sales.
Efficient. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but it's efficient.
However, someone who has worked in the legal industry and in professional environments in the United States for far too long, there is a cost element of that. And I think you and I can both agree. With that wonderful aspect of time is money and all of these other things about efficiency, there is something that is lost sometimes, which is like just a moment to sort of take it all in and not be in a rush and maybe shut down after a certain hour. I feel all the time I have to answer to someone tomorrow, not tomorrow, but now, right? And it's like
under pressure,
right? And that is the cost that I think that builds. And we have had previous conversations about this, like that sometimes can involve like taking lunch at your desk, like getting food on your computer because you're like trying to do 5 different things at once. Or I've had many times where like my drink is spilled on my keyboard, or, and now I'm in the shop because I'm doing too much. And I think the mental health element, I think that's just the world has picked up in general in terms of how quickly our response times are because we are so accessible. But one of the things that I find particularly challenging about American work culture is this, must be on all the time. And it's, I think the other thing too is you get a badge of honor if you've worked through lunch or if you've worked all weekend, or, it's almost like I gave up time on my holiday to do work, or we're going for a week. I think there's a lot of misery is comfort
Yes.
in the work culture environment. And that pulls away from just taking a step back and like maybe, enjoying a moment. I'll use an example. I arrived here on New Year's Day in São Paulo. And for me, like, the whole city outside of the pharmacies and a very small amount of people in the movie theater, which I happened to go to, it was so wonderful to just take this day and have it be totally quiet and see others doing that as well. And so I think like culturally, you arrive New Year's Day in New York City, restaurants are open, bars are open, the gyms are, New Year's special. You've got people working out at 7 a.m. New Year's morning. We're all ready to go. And, I think that can come at a cost because you really never fully release, right?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, talking about that, I can see clearly the difference between Europe, Latin America, and the United States. So I can talk about UK, that I had this amazing experience, and Europe in general, because I'm an European citizen and I know Europe very well, and Brazil/Latin America, because for obvious reasons, I'm Brazilian and I've been working with Latin America. So I think the key factor in Latin America is relationship. You have to build it up, solid relationships. I'm not saying that we mix work and pleasure, work and relationships, work and family. But in the end of the day, it counts a lot. It's super important to build it up amazing relationships, great relationships. You cannot do business without getting to know that person. And the United States, you can. And sometimes they even prefer, I don't want to know your name. I don't want to know your background. I just want to do business with you and I don't care about you or your life. So as everything in life has the good part and bad part, or pros and cons, or as you said, I mean, there is the terrible side, and the Europeans, on the other hand, they really are focused on the well balance of working and personal life. So I mean,
Hold on, can you explain what that is?
I'm sorry, I got confused.
I understand. There's people out there that actually are proactive about balancing work and I need a whole primer on what that means. I'm not familiar with this expression.
Work-life balance, it's something that the Europeans are the best. I don't know.
Interesting. Over the Latin Americans, would you?
For sure.
Oh, that's fascinating.
For sure. And don't forget, we're talking about São Paulo, one of the biggest cities in the world, the most important city in Latin America, that is super different than other cities in Brazil. Like, we make jokes that Cariocas, people in Rio de Janeiro, they don't work. Like the New Yorkers do this kind of jokes with the Floridians,
Right. Yeah. Actually, you know what? Now that we're having this conversation, one of the reasons why I choose to work here in Sao Paulo, because people are like, sort of going with the theme of this podcast name, why Sao Paulo? It reminds me, the hustle culture is very evident here, and more so than it is in Europe. So now that you're saying all this, at first I was teasing and being like, oh, wait, but no, that is essentially, I think, one of the reasons why I slide in and feel so at home here, because I'm like, there are super rush people with backpacks all over the city. And they've got the backpacks in the front and they're all wearing backpacks and they're in a rush and they come out of the train. And there's something for me, I think what has always drawn me to the city is this element of, I like this energy. It feels like I'm home.
You feel alive.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
I actually, like, one of the most invigorating things for me here is, when I'm on a weekday, is it's a very similar feeling to New York City, because sort of in lieu of coffee carts, which we have in the city, people are like running, going to coffee carts, going to Starbucks, grabbing their morning coffee. Here, if you happen to be near a metro stop or a bus station, earlier in the morning during rush hour, it's kind of cool, because from New York, you're like, oh, there's people out there making fresh OJ. But, there's this community of work commuters that is very evident and very in a rush at the very early hours of the morning. And I love seeing the people on the street, like with their cakes and, the equivalents of our like bagels and cream cheese and a cup of coffee in New York City. And there's like orange juice and cakes. And so I love that energy. So now that you are mentioning this, I'm not surprised, because I think for me, it's what draws me to this region as a New Yorker. Yeah.
And I'm so happy for you. I'm sure that you're gonna thrive. And I'm being very honest.
Yeah.
I'm being very honest
you.
because, it's not for everyone. We talked about this the other day. It's not easy to move around, to move abroad. There are a lot of things that you put on the table, emotionally speaking, psychologically speaking, financially speaking. There are so many things that are involved, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
But the leverage, the assets, it's really worth it. In the end of the day, it's amazing. But it's not for everyone.
Right.
So it's not
True.
easy to thrive in a city as New York, as São Paulo. It's hard. Especially with the cultural barriers, the language barriers. It's not easy. And in the end of the day, I always remember, if you can make here, you can make anywhere. It's from New York. I think you can use this sentence for every single big city that you go.
Yeah.
If you think, if you can make here, I can make anywhere.
Yeah,
if I make here.
it's so true, because you're taking yourself up and putting yourself in a situation that's not familiar. And with a lot of that comes, and that could be language barriers, culture barriers. People do interact differently, whether it be in business or even just going out to a restaurant. Do you leave a tip? Do you not leave a tip? Which countries do you leave tips in?
Exactly.
Do you tip the Uber drivers, or things that are like natural in one country? And then also, you and I have both talked about this, like there are certain elements of bureaucracy, whether you're moving back to your home country or going to a new country, that papers you have to fill out, things are not as easy,
Even I mentioned, like, I'm really drained, I'm really exhausted, because I'm moving back to São Paulo in 2 weeks' time, and I'm still dealing with the bureaucracy, and I'm moving back to my hometown, my country, and still, like, I haven't been sleeping, doing so many things. Can you imagine for a foreigner? Like moving abroad, it's such a big deal. But again, it's worth it. It's the best thing you can do in your life. And you become a much more fulfilled person and stronger. And you understand yourself and the world better.
Yeah. Even you and I have talked about this. You're coming back to a city as someone who is new, and that there's something extremely refreshing and invigorating. We had talked about what, you are going to build professional networks here because things will change. We talked about how we love to be in person with people, right? So you're going to come back here as a new person, you're still the same person, but you've grown, and now you're
different experience. I made this joke, like, when I moved to New York, I'm like, oh, okay, I've arranged so many meetings and coffees and this and that. And my boss was like, for what? You can sort it out this by phone. And I'm like, but I'm not going to get the most of it. And then now it's the other way around. I have so many meetings and I'm like, oh my God, do I have to see this person in person? Is it? should I? Because look at the traffic jam and this and that.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of work. So it's funny. As I
Yeah.
said, like for Americans, you have to be direct. You have to be, I mean, the directness, it's so important. You have to be efficient. You have to deliver. If you are in New York, much more, because why I'm highlighting this, we can compare Brazil and the United States regarding states. I mean, the states are so different. We are talking about completely different countries, but they are so big. They have
Right.
a huge population. And even in the same country, people are so different because each state is so different. So I've learned, I mean, how to work as an American and how to work as an European and how to work as a Brazilian. But it's still, working in New York, it was priceless because it's so different.
Yeah.
It's so rough.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's something to be said for that. I mean, in terms of professionally post college, my experience is limited, to New York. I mean, even in Sao Paulo, I'm working, but my work is still coming out of the United States and New York. And so I would also say that, I mean, you've worked in 2 different cities in the US. So I think New York is kind of in its own little category.
It's very centric.
Yeah. And so there are other regions of the U.S. that, might be different. And actually, you're bringing up a really good point for me right now, where I'm just connecting the dots on the call. Like, I feel like one of the similarities that I'm becoming more and more aware of, and especially now that we are talking about this, is this concept of like, the U.S. and Brazil are giant countries with states making up the framework of these countries, whereas the distance in Europe to go from, let's say, I'll use Portugal to Italy, right? Or you're going from 2 very different countries.
And the time zone difference is so big. Yeah. I'm saying this because I still work with Europe and I have so many friends and contact. And honestly, for me, it's like other planet. Like São Paulo and New York, they are so attached for obvious reasons. First, they are so similar. They hustle. They are big cities. They are the financial centers, but they have almost the same time zone. There are so many people from São Paulo and New York, and people from New York are always traveling to São Paulo. And I mean, I'm super attached to London, but it's still, every year I'm not that attached anymore because it's like, oh my God, they are working with Asia and Middle East and Australia. And I'm like, I can't follow this time zone and this difference. And,
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And so the states in Brazil, they have such a huge area within the country, but they also have, even though the sort of the cultural language is somewhat similar, the differences between someone in New York versus someone in the other areas of the country versus, right, it's similar to Brazil. You have such a dynamic makeup of one country specifically, which I think is common. And I just feel, I can't explain it. When I'm in Sao Paulo or in Brazil, like, I really feel aligned emotionally with home. And it could be the time zone thing, the energy here. It feels very similar. In areas that are very uniquely different, but also like a huge similar aspect as well.
I couldn't agree more. The restaurants, I mean, London, you can find amazing restaurants, of course, from around the globe. I mean, you can find food from literally every single country. But it's different. In New York, sometimes I was like, it's kind of like I'm in São Paulo.
Yeah.
Or you are in São Paulo and you feel like, oh, I can find really nice restaurants here from around the world and amazing food. But I think talking about the difference and similarities from, I mean, São Paulo and New York, I think we are so different, but at the same time, so similar.
Yeah.
It's awkward to say. Why I'm saying that? Like, we have so many things because we live in really tough cities with a lot of chaos 24/7. And strugglers. I mean, you eat or you kill.
Chaos
Definitely.
is the perfect word.
Chaos is the perfect. But at the same time, you have everything.
Yeah.
And but it's still like when I arrived in New York, I couldn't. I don't know if you're gonna understand. Maybe yes, maybe not. Perhaps you can understand a little bit what I'm talking about. People in São Paulo are more rough than people in Brazil, but it's far away from New York because in São Paulo we say good morning, good afternoon,
yes, that's
good
something.
night. How are you? Let's have a coffee.
It's just a lot to get used to.
You can't say even hi to your neighbor. I remember one of my best friends. She was in my apartment in Manhattan for 1 month. I was traveling abroad. And then she was like, what the problem with your neighbors? I say, hi, good morning. They look at me and they can actually respond. I said, personal, don't get too personal. It's New York. I know that it's not nice, but just like let it go, because they're different.
It's interesting too. Even, as a New Yorker here, I realize like I'm not used to people doing that, and also the return expectation. So, sometimes if I'm listening to a podcast or like, I don't want to be rude, right?
Yep.
But sometimes, and so I sometimes have to be like, right, this, you have to, the importance of this is really strong. And even though you come from a place where people don't do it, like I sometimes will, like, it'll register and I'm like, wait, no, like make sure you're saying hello. Don't forget, someone just walked by, make sure you greet them. And I think it takes a little bit of getting used to on both ends, just because of, I think there's something beautiful about saying hi. And, more often than not, I also get a hug from a lot of people as well, which is, and even more so from a kiss. And it's nice. It's a very warm feeling, but also still something that I had to acclimate myself to in terms of reciprocity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But at the same time, we have to respect different cultures.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that mine is completely right and yours is completely different. It's what I told my friend. I said, look, you are on holidays.
Yeah.
Those people, they eat what they kill. They are busy. Leave them alone, I wouldn't do that. I would say good morning. I would say good afternoon. I would talk to you, but I can't judge them because people have different backgrounds, different cultures, and you are in their city, in their country. Yeah. But of course, there are international diplomacy. That's why they call New Yorkers tough.
Totally. Well, one last question for you.
Of course.
If you're a worker coming from another country and you are working for a Brazilian company, either here in Brazil or abroad, and working for a Brazilian-owned company, especially this element of greeting everyone, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Is there anything else that you know off the top of your head culturally that you can recommend to someone starting off at a Brazilian company that would be helpful?
Yes, it's going to be a tip for myself as well. As I told you that I feel like I probably drive so many people crazy. Like when I moved to DC, I was one person. When I moved to London, another person. When I moved to New York, another person. When I moved to Florida, another person. Then I'm going to move back to Brazil and probably people look at me and say, oh my God, she's so rough. She doesn't talk. She's so this and that. And then I'm going to have to remind Mônica, you are Brazilian, you are in Brazil, the dynamic's different, and you have to build relationships and trust. Like I was always like this. It's like an asset and leverage. My personality is like this. But I had to remodeling living abroad. Like, Mônica, don't talk too much. Listen more than speak. Monica, be like constant, down to earth,
A lot of
quick.
pressure. Sounds like a lot.
Sure. To
Oh my gosh.
Brazil. Sure. And then I have some people that look at me and say, you are not the same person anymore. Of course. So
Yeah.
talking about this, we have to remind ourselves that in Brazil, relationship is the key
Yeah.
factor. It's super important. I'm not saying the most important thing. There are so many. It's multifactorial. But I think people are really sociable and into relationship and trust.
Yeah. No, well,
And you can get the best things from our Brazilian personality because you can build it up so many beautiful relationships. You can have amazing friendships and you can use even for working. I'm not saying that you're going to mix like work and personal life, but you end up doing business with your friends, with your
right.
acquaintance, and the another way around as well, becoming friends. I made a lot of friends from my career, especially in Brazil.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
so great. Well, I'm excited to have you come back in a few weeks, and this was wonderful. I'm so glad we got the chance to do this today, Sesta. And I thank you again.
No, I'm super thankful. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this opportunity. I feel like I could have said so many more important things, but I hope this little, I mean, I don't know if it was nice, but I think it helps.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you again. And next time in Portuguese, okay?
Of course, and I'm
Uh,
eager to be part of São Paulo again. I'm so happy that I'm gonna come back to my
we're waiting.
country,
We're waiting for you.
to
Yes.
my beautiful city, and
We'll
I
pick
have
out a
to
place.
highlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to
Well,
highlight São Paulo is amazing. People from
um,
São Paulo can't take for granted. São Paulo
good.
is like
I'm
outstanding,
glad.
one of the best cities in the world.
I'm glad to hear that. I couldn't agree more. And I look forward to seeing you here.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Why Sao Paulo, exploring Brazil's magic through its people and places. I hope you enjoyed the stories about this incredible city, learning unique insights from the discussion. If you found this episode interesting or inspiring, please share it with friends or family who might be also curious about Sao Paulo and the depth of the incredible aspects of life in Brazil. Don't forget to rate and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps others discover the show. I'm so excited to continue this journey with you as we uncover more of what makes Sao Paulo and the country of Brazil so magical. Until next time, take care and keep exploring.